Hello and welcome to another edition of Educate and Protect, the video podcast brought to you by Cavignac. These video podcasts are designed to be short, 10 to 15 minute question and answer sessions on current and relevant topics affecting your business. Our goal is to help you better understand the present so you can have confidence in the future. My name is Megan Dickerson. I'm the Director of Risk Control and the host of today's video podcast. With me is Diana Dix, HR Risk Advisor for our Expanded Core clients. Welcome, Diana.
Hello, it's nice to be here.
So today we're going to discuss return to work and COVID-19 and vaccinations and how all of that is going to dovetail together. So as more and more people have access to vaccines and the number of COVID-19 cases continues to decrease across the country, California is inching closer and closer to fully reopening, and employers are naturally thinking about how and when to bring workers back to offices or job sites and what the workplace will look like in the future. Today, we're going to talk about what you should be considering as you lay out your plan for transitioning your employees back to the workplace. So, Diana, tell me, as employers begin to formulate their plans, where should they start?
Well, there's so much to think about, right? But I think the first place is really about having a structured approach, doing your analysis, just like you would with any project in your organization, is beginning with doing that needs assessment as to what will that post-pandemic workplace look like for your organization, because the reality is what 2019 is in the past, and 2021 looks completely different. So what is that vision, and how does it impact your employees that will be returning back? I think that right now there are three different types of workplaces, you can say, for employees. They're in three different situations. You've got employees who haven't worked remote. They are essential workers or essential businesses, and they've been working at a work site or at the workplace the entire time through that pandemic. You also have businesses that primarily they had that stay-at-home order. Everybody went to work remote, and they've been working remote the entire time. And then finally, you also have these businesses that are working in this hybrid or a staggered flex schedule where you have a limited number of employees coming into the workplace for certain days of the week, and or having that flexible schedule altogether. So there's these different work sites, which means that your strategy or your approach or plan is going to be different from every business, because you might be at a different stage when it comes to your business and where employees are working, and also being able to understand what your employees also want and need, because they're
because it also might change, right? Yeah. Like you might be fully remote now, but then you might end up being hybrid, at the end of this year and going into next year. And
yeah. Exactly. Everybody's in a different space or a different place in their life, both at work and in their personal life, because you still have employees who are caring for a elderly family member or a child who's also in a remote learning capacity as well, or a hybrid capacity as well. So there's this need of flexibility that employees probably will continue to need, and maybe even expecting, now that they've had the ability to kind of establish themselves in this new way of working, especially those who have this now newfound flexibility or work arrangement that they didn't have in the past. Right. So I think that for the most part, beginning with an analysis is going to be important, and categorizing or doing an inventory of the roles that you have in your company or your employees, and identifying what are some of those roles that have to be in the office, in the workplace, in order for them to do their jobs. Does that job require collaboration with other departments, other individuals? Are those roles client facing or staff facing that require to be in the workplace? Or, somebody is typically client facing on the road. Does that person really need to be in the workplace? If it's not employee facing, does it need to really be in the workplace or not? So what are those positions that can successfully perform their job remotely and continue to do so? The other factor too is getting executive buy-in. For the most part, there you have that mix, that 50-50 right now, where you have some executives who are saying, nope, we want everybody back in the office 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And then you have other leaders who are saying, this works. Let's keep it like that. There's, why change it? People are comfortable. They're performing great. The efficiency is great. The flexibility is a morale booster. So let's just keep it that way. So it's trying to really have that consensus with those leaders about what that strategy is going to be, and understanding some of their concerns as well, and identifying those concerns. So that's part of that overall analysis that needs to take into effect or account. The other factor too is there's the business need, the operational needs that you need to look at, right? And then the other factor is, what are your employees' needs? And I'm a big proponent of surveying your staff to understand what their desires are, what their needs are. There's one survey that actually showed that of those employees working remote, 51% would choose to split their time between home and office. 31% would choose to work from home every single day, and 18% would choose a traditional in-person work environment. So, it goes to show that the majority of employees want some kind of flexibility as you start to plan for that transition back to the office. Take those numbers into account as well.
Yeah, it is important, I think, where you were saying to get everybody on the same page. Management really needs to figure out how to, have a cohesive strategy and take employee considerations into effect, because otherwise I could see people would end up getting disgruntled over time, and how we think of benefits might start to change. Employees are going to be looking for more flexibility. I mean, they were before, but now even more, and it's a pretty tight labor pool out there, at least at the moment. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that also with remote work and more organizations having this or considering this flexible work arrangement, I really do foresee, especially given the numbers, that this is going to be one of those competitive advantage when it comes to talent.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Organizations that can provide that are going to be much more attractive than those who still have that traditional in-person work environment, especially for positions that don't necessarily need to be at the workplace. So this may be one of those leverages that organizations will have to compete with for talent. Absolutely.
And then aside from how management would like to see the organization run and taking into account employees' desires and kind of inventorying the types of jobs that you have and what's possible and what's not, what are the compliance requirements? Like, what do employers have to do? And then what is optional?
Yeah, and keep in mind that, as we're getting closer to more people having access to vaccines and getting vaccinated, there are changes that are happening, and at the federal level and also at the state level. However, keep in mind that you still have to comply with any Cal OSHA regulations for California employers. Those are still in place. Yes, there's proposals about making change coming soon,
Hasn't happened
but
yet.
as of today, it hasn't happened as of yet. So even though, what was it, yesterday, the CDC provided updates to their face covering guidance, that still applies here in California, which means that you still have
down yet.
it hasn't changed. So until further notice, right, you still have to comply with Cal OSHA regulations until those regulations are updated, until we get more guidance from the state or local government with regards to what employers can and cannot do.
Right.
So employees still have to wear face
county
covering.
guidance we have to follow, right? It's not just the state, It's not just Cal OSHA, it's whatever county you're in can have their own more restrictive requirements. Okay, well, that's really good. That's really good information.
Yeah, no, and it's that light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Right.
That we're getting there.
It's so good to finally actually be able to see light at the end of the tunnel, even if we're not there yet. It's very encouraging to see things starting to go back to normal. Okay, so what options are available in terms of how, when employers are thinking about how they're going to structure that workplace, what options are available for them?
So, I mean, you have the option to require everybody to return back to the workplace. However, you have to consider, one, the compliance piece of things, right? There are a lot of steps that you need to take, such as having your COVID-19 return to work or compliance plan in place. That is mandated by Cal OSHA. So you have to have that. You have to educate your employees or communicate to your employees as to what are the steps that you're taking into in place in your organization to be safe and keep them safe as well. So you've got to have all of those components in place, and the social distance aspect and things of that nature. So that's, as of now, still needs to happen if you wish to bring everybody back to the workplace. But then you also, again, consider the employee impact. You're now, I heard someone say it so nicely and it just made sense. You're moving their cheese once again. So you had these employees quickly change into a traditional work environment, into remote work environment, adjust the way that they worked, create a new habit per se, right? And a new way of working. And now after a year and a half, they've got their little swing going. They know what to do, how to manage things. Some people have adopted pets. You know, some people are taking advantage of spending time working out during lunchtime or whatever it may be. And now you're changing that all over again. So there's those levels of stress that will come into play when you're quickly changing these. So I think that there needs to be a phased approach. Whatever direction you're going to go, there needs to be a phased approach where people will slowly start to acclimate to this new work arrangement. So one of them, again, is that retention aspect, the impact to employees, stress level, that change component, and then maybe also that competitive advantage that others may have in attracting some of your talent. But if you do take that phased-in approach of returning your employees, think about staggered schedules, maybe a staggered week or days in the office, perhaps maybe a part-time remote schedule, flexible hours if that's the case. Maybe that you might be having to respond to employees' requests to continue to work remote for the long term. And maybe even thinking about, okay, are there going to be days that we need everybody back in the office, or certain departments back in the office for meetings or events?
And then how are you going to do that safely if you have to do that? Yeah,
exactly. Lots to consider, but I do think that there needs to be a phased approach. The other factor too is the communication piece of it, addressing what that return to the office timeline will look like, and all of the components that have been incorporated in the organization to ensure safety in the workplace. And I think that this goes back to your COVID-19 prevention program that you already have, And if you don't, make sure that you give us a call. We can provide you a template, because that is required by law for you to have in place as you bring people back to, as they're working back in your organization.
And also, even outside of requirements, you know, employees want to know what to expect, right? And if you don't tell them what to expect, they'll fill it in with their own information. They may be concerned about their safety. They may be concerned about all kinds of things. So on one hand, it's required, and on the other hand, it's also a best practice.
Exactly, because that's where the fear comes in, right? The fear of the unknown, especially because you're taking them from this safe bubble of their home for the past year and a half to all of a sudden bursting that bubble and saying, you now have to go to the workplace. So, I mean, it's important to keep that component in mind. But aside from all of those safety requirements that, again, Cal OSHA is going to be your best resource as far as what your guides are. And again, we're here to help you through managing that and understanding what are the requirements for safety protocols, face coverings, physical distancing, hygiene in the office, any kind of office configuration as well for meetings or gatherings. We can help you with all of those and what those policies should look like.
Yeah, we definitely can. That's absolutely why we are here. The big question on everybody's minds, of course, the last piece of this is vaccines. How are they going to play into this situation? Should employers be requiring vaccines? Can they require vaccines? What kind of documentation do you need? How is that going to fold into this situation?
Yes, certainly. And you know, I'm not going to go into the weeds because we did that in a previous podcast with Iris from Dunn DeSantis.
Which is still on our website if you want to go back and listen to that one.
Absolutely. Take a look at those, because it will go into the details about the legal consideration. So it's definitely something for you to take a look at, but it's still trying to determine, as an employer, do we mandate those vaccines? Do we encourage employees to take their vaccines? Do we make a decision that only employees who have been vaccinated can come back to the office? But then you've got to think about what that cultural impact will be. How are you isolating the other employees who can't get vaccinated for, you know, medical reasons, religious reasons, or any other reason? Are you now negatively impacting them from being able to come to the workplace? And again, because there are legal implications in some of those situations, do you have to provide a reasonable accommodation for them to be able to return to the workplace? So it really is a lot to consider when you are determining whether to mandate or encourage, or how is that workplace going to look like when we return if we don't have everybody who is vaccinated in the workplace. And then also, just like we were talking about before we started recording, is how do you track it? How do you know who has been vaccinated and who hasn't, to determine whether can we be in the same space without our face coverings? I mean, that's still yet to come because Cal OSHA hasn't made those changes yet. But
it probably is coming, so it's worth thinking about at this point.
It definitely is. And I think, for one, going back to surveying your employees, trying to gauge what are those existing vaccination levels. And you can do it anonymously just to get an understanding. And if you're looking for surveys that will either help you understand the employee's desire or where they are with regards to returning back to work, or gauging the level of vaccination in your workplace, just go ahead and reach out to any one of us at the risk control team. We've got some templates that we can share with you for you to use so you can evaluate or survey your team. But I think that that's going to be important to just kind of gauge where everybody is at. Most people are likely to share anonymously that they've been vaccinated or they have no desire to get vaccinated than to actually tell you face to face. So that might be a great approach to do it. Now, the other thing too is Can you ask people for proof of their vaccination prior to coming to the workplace? Yes, you can. Just note that you will want to ensure that employees understand that that confidential information will be safeguarded. However your processes are today with regards to safeguarding any medical information, you're going to want to continue those same processes. But again, then you go into situations where, what about those who do not give you a copy, don't feel comfortable sharing that information with you? How are you going to handle those employees? And that's going to go into determining what your approach for, or your strategy for returning to the workplace is going to be. You know, maybe it's a matter of continuing some remote work for the time being until there is more development in California with regards to that reopening.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so there's a lot to think about, many different aspects to think about when we're, you know, talking about coming out of this pandemic and returning to normal life, whatever that's going to look like. Is there anything else that employers should be thoughtful about, or anything else that you would want to share with our clients on this subject?
I mean, for the most part, I mean, so last year, the big word or that phrase that we all heard was "you're on mute." I think that for 2021, for 2021, it's going to be about.
Maybe you should have been on mute.
Exactly. But I think now it's going to be about flexibility and having that flexibility, approaching the situation with empathy and flexibility in your policies, in your process going forward.
Yep. Yep, we do know that there's light at the end of the tunnel regarding this pandemic, you know, as we've mentioned through this. But we also know that the workplace as we knew it has changed. It's going to be a different kind of place. We're not, you know, how that looks, time will tell. And I think it'll also look a little bit different for every employer. But as you've mentioned, there's a lot of options on the table, and flexibility is probably going to be key. So we wanted to share that information with you today, and we hope that the information that we shared today will help you develop the right plan for your business and your employees. You know, just remember that we're here to help you manage this transition. We have multiple different levels of services available to our clients. One of the reasons we established the expanded core servicing program is to provide that level of consulting for our clients and help them get through difficult situations. We didn't expect situations to be quite this difficult, but you know, we're here to help you with this. And so feel free to reach out to any of our risk control consultants for guidance if you have a question on any of this stuff, or if you want to know more about our services. And that wraps up this session of Educate and Protect. Diana, thank you for joining me today.
Of course.
It was great to have you, and stay tuned for more video podcasts presented to you by Cavignac.